Hello everyone, my name is Veritas and welcome back to The Division. Now this video is going to be a slightly different format than my normal ones, being that I have this audio recording now and I will find the gameplay for it later. But I wanted to discuss a few things, meta and not so meta with The Division overall. I made a video previously talking about my initial thoughts, or my roughly initial thoughts on the Underground DLC and 1.3 update. Mentioning that I enjoyed it, but there were some glaring problems. I called into question the G36 nerf, the problem with a lot of the AI and NPCs in the game being giant sponges of health, the players being consistently nerfed to the point where they can't fight against the constantly buffed AI, things of that nature. And I wanted to take this video to delve more into that idea. Now that Underground has been out for what I imagine is a couple weeks, I don't know the specific release date from that, but it feels like it's been out for almost a month now. And I wanted to talk about 1.3 Underground DLC and pretty much the state of Division as it rests right now in the players' hands. Starting with the Division and the DLC. Underground as a whole is a fun experience. It's a genuinely fun experience. It scratches the itch that I have from Destiny, where I enjoyed playing multiple strikes, the same 5 strikes over and over and over, just to have something to do for minimum to decent, okay, maybe rewards. And it feels like Underground kind of does that, especially if you're running, hard Underground missions, multi-phase with directives on. It kind of lends itself to like a repetitive thing, but it's still fun to do and something that's fun to sink time into, but not necessarily a good avenue of progression. Now, when you move into challenging and heroic in the Underground, you immediately notice that challenging and heroic in the Underground are not the same difficulty as challenging and heroic in the story missions up in Manhattan, and that is a point of issue with a few people in the community. It has been mentioned a few times, and when I usually say the community, I'm usually referring to posts made on the Division subreddit, which is like the largest community basis for the Division, or comments made on the Division Discord server, pretty much the hubs of the community where they can talk, where that percent of players can come and discuss and make their points heard. So when I refer to the community, it's whispers on Twitter, the stray tweets from Division players, the subreddit, the Discord server, pretty much anything that comes across my desk that might have mentioned Division outside of the mathematic definition of it. I kind of remember the key points that are repeated. And the fact that challenging and heroic are different in Underground as opposed to story missions was something people were confused by. In my personal opinion, I feel like challenging and heroic in story missions are almost synonymous. I feel like challenging isn't really challenging, and I feel like heroic is a good challenging. And I know that's kind of shitty to say, because if I had told myself that challenging's not that hard, like a couple months ago when I couldn't even do challenging story missions, I would have been like, fuck you, future me. But, I mean, honestly, running around with a 226 gear set build, I don't have a lot of trouble in heroic. And that might be gear score, that might be my experience as a player, my ability as a player, maybe playing with good teams of randoms or with a friend. It could be any number of things, but I feel like the heroic difficulty in the main story missions is a good difficulty. But I feel like challenging Underground is like heroic in story missions, and then I feel like the heroic Underground is like the heroic story missions times like 2.5. It almost becomes unfair and unfun. I was having a lot of fun running challenging Underground multi-phases with no directives, because it felt like it was a fun and enjoyable experience. But once you start stacking on directives, which are all negative, it just stops being fun and starts being a chore. Massive is very good at making something that could be fun into something that is viewed and felt like a chore. Take HVTs, for example. The idea of the high-value targets and going around to certain safe houses for critical objectives and search and destroy missions to go and kill groups of enemies for intel is a fun idea, and it rewards and kind of semi-forces exploration out of the player post-level 30. Because, when you get to level 30, you've probably explored most of the city, but not every nook and cranny, and the HVTs and search and destroy missions kind of show you places you might not have seen before, certain subway tunnels, certain buildings, things like that, and they kind of revitalize areas of the game that aren't integral to the main plot. And I think that's a good idea, but I feel like there should be more search and destroy missions per zone. Currently there are like 3 in each zone. I think there should be like 5 or 6. Have two that are critical and then 3 that are not critical. Because right now it feels like you get about 6 or 7 intel if you're lucky from a given zone. I feel like it should be like 10 or 12, but then it comes back to the Phoenix credit problem that was in the game originally, where people felt, or at least Massive felt, like when you killed named bosses, you were getting too many Phoenix credits, and they nerfed that to almost no Phoenix credits, and then they were like, this is a problem, so they put back Phoenix credits in, but not in an enormous amount. I almost feel like that's pointless at this point, because if you do story missions, you get Phoenix credits, and if you kill named bosses, you get like 3. And I guess it's just an extra thing that they threw in somewhere to say, hey, there's this now. But it feels like there's too many different sources to get things from, and none are really good unless you're playing like severe endgame. To bring this back into focus, I want to talk about the Dark Zone in my next little spiel here. I personally stopped playing Division the day 1.1 came out solely because of the community backlash over the Falcon Lost incursion. The immediate cheesing and glitching of that incursion for endgame gear within like the first hour or two that the incursion was live. The poor response from Massive to the community about that. Them not really doing anything and saying don't do that, and players just saying fuck you, I'm gonna do what I want. That kind of turned me off of the Division for a while, because there hadn't been anything yet. There hadn't been a raid-esque activity that rewarded you so highly for basically doing no work if you glitched it, and that was frustrating, because if you didn't want to glitch it and you wanted to actually play the incursion, you couldn't get into a matchmaking game unless you found 3 other people that also wanted to not glitch it. And that comes into the flaw of the matchmaking system in the Division that everyone seems to praise, but also hate at the same time. When I eventually did come back to Division, I dipped my toe in the water here and there between 1.1, 1.2, around when the HVTs came out. Every time they kind of updated or patched it significantly, I would come back and test it out. But it didn't really re-catch my attention until 1.3 and the Underground DLC, when there was enough in the game to keep my attention. But I soon realized that one of the problems with the Division is the avenues of progression in the game are not good enough. I was looking at a certain gear set that I like called Alpha Bridge, and I was looking at the known sources of Alpha Bridge, and I kind of broke it down into 11 sources. There are technically 11 sources for Alpha Bridge gear, and I think it was something like, of the 11, 7 of those were Dark Zone related. 2 of them were Incursion. One of them was a vendor that gives you very low gear score variants of it, and the other one was Underground. That's only if you use a bunch of directives and you get it from the end of the mission and you're lucky. And a lot of the gear sets and a lot of the stuff in the game either comes from activities that people don't like but have to do for the good gear, or it's locked behind areas of the game that are so unbelievably unfair to the player that you don't even want to try playing them. And if you're wondering what I mean by that, I mean Falcon Lost and the Dark Zone. Falcon Lost is really the only place in the game that you can get some of the best gear sets in the game, namely Sentry's Call, and you have to get it from there. And that incursion is a miserable slog. Moving into the other gear sets that might be convenient for you, a lot of them and a lot of the progression in the game is locked inside the Dark Zone. At least a lot of the visible progression is locked inside the Dark Zone. The tangible progression is locked inside the Dark Zone. And the issue with the Dark Zone is, in that time when I wasn't playing, apparently Massive thought it a good idea to go into the Dark Zone and add in brackets. So if you're most effective and you like playing with a gear set, say 220 or 225, but you have the gear to be 245, it'll throw you into the bracket that matches 245 even though you never equip that gear. Just because you have it, it throws you into that bracket. And that, I feel, is a problem. I don't know why it can't be a Radiant thing. Why, if you wander into the Dark Zone as a 220, it puts you into the appropriate bracket for that, and once you get in there, if you decide to equip something higher, it shifts you in, it phase transitions you into the upper bracket, and then back again if you want to. Because it's not necessarily helping you at all to be thrown into a higher bracket if you're not using that gear. It's unfair to the player to be thrown into a bracket higher than them that is populated with players that are stronger than them for no other reason than, oh, you happen to pick this thing up that was really good. You're never going to use it because it doesn't fit your build. But here, now that you have something with a higher number, enjoy being killed by people that are a higher gear score than you and are then inherently stronger than you. The other problem with the Dark Zone is they, for some reason, decided to buff all of the AI, where I think every enemy in the Dark Zone now is an elite. From my limited experience in the Dark Zone post 1.1, it seems every enemy is an elite, and they start in DZ01 at level 32, and only increase to 35 when you get up to 06. And that's an excessive difference from the old Dark Zone, where you could still find, relatively low enemies, and the only time you'd run into elites was when you found a named boss. And even then, those enemies were hard as hell to kill, unless you had a decent team or you were built like a tank. Speaking of tank builds, the tanktician meta, or whatever you want to call it, that's currently plaguing the Dark Zone, it's I don't understand it. I don't understand the mentality of players that build themselves in a way, or even Alpha Bridge shotgunners, people that deliberately build themselves in a way that almost seems like they're doing it because they know it'll make everyone else have a bad time. I'm someone personally, am someone who goes around and collects intel until I have 99 or roughly close to it, and then I'll go and buy the HVTs for fellow players. I'll LFG and I'll be like, hey, I have the intel for this, and I tend to be someone who is, kind and generous and helpful and polite, and if someone's looking for a specific piece of gear and they mention it and I happen to get it, I'll be like, hey, I got that thing you wanted, does this help your build? If not, I'll take it back and I can dismantle it. I'm that kind of person in the division, and it feels like either it's the loud minority, or it genuinely is a decent chunk of players seem to be more focused on making everyone else have a bad time as opposed to, sharing in a good experience with everyone. And I know that multiplayer games are always going to have people that we refer to as shitters. And I understand that. I accept that. That's just going to be because internet anonymity, you can get away with it with almost no recompense, if that's the word for that. And it's fine. When people start actually like cheating, like hacking or whatever, then you can get reported and have your account banned, but you really can't get in trouble for being a piece of shit. If you're a jerk in real life, you haven't broke the law, but no one likes you. And I feel like people really let that side of themselves out in online games, specifically in The Division. A lot of the times if you are, of a gear score that is suboptimal in someone else's eyes, you can't get into a game through this wonderful matchmaking system that everyone seems to kind of praise and hate in The Division. There's matchmaking for almost every activity in the game, but it doesn't mean shit if you can't find a decent team. And that's one of the reasons I don't really care for the matchmaking system. I mean, sometimes it's okay. I would say about half the time it's garbage. But I mean, that's still leaving you half the time that it's decent. Like I said before, I run a 226 Alpha Bridge build. I have the gear to be 225 or 255. I could be maximum, but I would be ineffective and unhelpful. And so, an effective build for me is 226. If you open matchmaking and search for things like challenging or heroic underground as a 226, even though I've done it before, I can do it. And story missions, especially on heroic and challenging, it's like, that's easy to me. People see the number and they say, "Oh, that guy's fucking stupid and useless. Let's just kick him. Let's wait for the 240 pluses because they must be better at the game because of the number next to their name." And I understand the mentality behind that. I do. I genuinely do. If I'm running a challenging daily mission or something, and the recommended there is like I think 200 or 180 or something like that, you really shouldn't be doing challenging unless you're 200. Probably not. But if you're in an activity and everyone else is like 240 and you're like 190, you're probably gonna get kicked out just on the basis of they want another 240. And I get that. It's player choice. It's up to whoever's leading the cell to, and by the way, that's what they're called. The full team of agents is called a cell. I don't know why no one says that, but probably because it sounds pretentious. But anyway, whoever is leading the group, it is their choice to kick people out or leave people in, and I understand that. The problem behind that is that they don't know how you're built. And if, say, they introduced an inspect system, it would help and hurt more, because people would be able to look at you and say, "Oh, you're built into this, so I guess that's why you're a lower gear score." But then people would also be like, "Why are you running that? Why are you using this weapon? Why is your this that?" And they would critique and they'd get up in your face about things, and that's where it would come in to be a flaw. I just feel like a lot of the systems in Division are more flawed than they are helpful. Between the Dark Zone being a miserable, grief-filled, and, anti-fun experience, and also having all of the what seems to be good loot locked behind it, and then you have, the heroic story missions that people grind, and people don't really want to deal with anyone lower than a 245, and then you have the Underground DLC, where again, you can be effective if you're built in a certain way, but if your number's too small, people kick you, constantly. And I was talking to my friend the other day. He was asking, because he hasn't played Division in forever, and was asking how I was feeling about it, because, I started playing it again, and when I start playing games again, I kind of get addicted to them, and he was asking, how's Division? And the best explanation I could give to him was, everyone hates each other. From my experiences and the experiences of my friends and people online that I've heard, and the community, it seems like Division is built in a way where everyone hates everyone else. And I don't just mean the players. I mean, it feels like Division as a game doesn't want you to progress. Like, it actively is fighting you against progressing, which is a very big problem. Trying to get certain pieces to drop, trying to make the loot system work, trying to get into decent lobbies, to do decent activities, to get decent gear is so convoluted and time consuming that it's almost not even worth it. And I should clarify that my experience is on console, it is on Xbox, and a lot of Xbox players are assholes. That just stems from the whole Halo background where everyone was a douchebag. But it seems like this also reaches over to PS4, and players over there are being kind of assholes. And I've kind of figured out that it's just the console. And I'm not saying that PC players are, God's children in this case, but I feel like console players are way shittier to each other than PC players. But back to the whole hating each other thing, I explained that it felt like Massive hates the player base, or at least is upset with them for having fun and playing their game. And in an extreme example, I described it as Massive hates the players hate Massive, Division hates the players hate Division, the players hate the players, and the players hate the players. Like, everyone hates each other, and that's varying degrees of hate. It could be a strong dislike, a random thing said, yada yada, but it feels like everyone is out to get each other as opposed to trying to help each other. And I don't understand why. We're all in this together, we're all playing Division, we're all trying to get gear and get loot and have fun, and yet so many people, or like I said before, maybe it's just the loudest minority, but it seems like so many players are playing the game just to make everyone else's time playing it as miserable as possible, or to show them the worst time they can. And that's just not fair. I have a lot of time to play Division. If I wanted to, I could literally play it all day long. But I don't want to, because I haven't gotten an upgrade in, 2 weeks. And it's like, I play a lot of Division, and even with my hours in it, I don't see upgrades. Either it be LFG sites or the Division Discord server not really being good to Xbox or console players. I've seen that brought up a few times recently where people say that, I don't have any problem with the in-game matchmaking, or I don't have any problem with the Division Discord server, or I don't have any problem with LFG whatever in Division, and I'm on PC. It seems like the PC players have a better time matchmaking and LFGing than the console players do, it's frustrating, but I suppose I understand that. But between it feeling like console players are on the inferior version of the game, not even in terms of graphics or performance, but inferior in terms of the other people playing and their experience being worse because of the community that comes with consoles, and then not being able to get progress because it's literally so random that you could just never get an upgrade. And then the only time something comes into the game that makes the process fair, it gets removed. It's just the process behind Massive's patching, nerfing, whatever you want to call it, in the Division is so skewed and uncommunicated that it makes it feel like they just don't care. And I somewhere in me, I feel like they have to care, but I just don't feel like they do. And it's just, it sucks. And at this point, most people would say, stop bitching and just don't play it. Yeah, and that's kind of where I am with it. A lot of the activities are fun, in small doses. And like I said, I have all the time in the world to play Division, and I choose not to. And I feel bad for anyone that has like an hour or two every couple of days or every day, between doing a bunch of shit and just having like an hour to play a video game, and they just want to kick back, and they don't necessarily know about all the garbage going on in Division. They just know they bought a game, they enjoy playing it, they hit 30, they're starting to get some, better gear, and then they get lost. Because Division is very convoluted, and it's very unclear with what you need to do. There's so many currencies and so many different vendors that sell you varying, slightly variant things, and there's so many activities that give out different things, and you like, unless you looked it up, you wouldn't know where to go for something. And even then, if you're not keeping up like day by day with the goings on inside Division, you probably don't even know what's in the game to get. It's like a lot of the stuff you would never come across because a lot of people don't play all of the content. They stick to what they're comfortable with. I don't know how I have a full 4-piece set of Alpha Bridge and have never gone into the Dark Zone aside from like a 5-minute jaunt into DZ01 only to get one shot by a sticky bomb tanctician. And then I was like, well, fuck this. This is garbage. Why would I ever come in here and subject myself to this trash? It's like, I don't even know how I have Alpha Bridge if I've never been in the Dark Zone, and everyone's like, oh, Alpha Bridge only dropped in the Dark Zone. It's like, I don't know how I have it. And HVT's only dropping Lone Star, which is, relatively terrible, and I don't know. I feel like you really have to do research on the Division to see where you can best spend your time, and then pray to the Division overlords that playing those activities actually gives you what you're looking for. You can know where everything drops to the exact fucking named NPC, difficulty, time, yada yada, the gear score number, the possibility, the percentage of drops, the rolls, the RNG involved, and all that fun stuff. You can know the strategic alignment of the stars and the stratosphere, but it doesn't matter because it won't reward you for your time. And that's my biggest problem with Division, is it doesn't feel rewarding for your time. And people constantly say, and this at least 2 or 3 of these posts make it to the front page of Reddit every day on the Division, talking about how they're essentially titled, "You're not getting loot, get over it, baby." And then they go on to cite Diablo or World of Warcraft, and they're like, all these console players never played an MMO before, and now they have to deal with hours and hours sunk into activities and not getting the loot they want. Babies. Yeah, sure, if you want to be an asshole about it, but it doesn't need to be that way. Like, I understand that there are games that take hundreds of hours to get an upgrade in. I understand that. Division doesn't have to be that way. Especially since it didn't used to be that way. I feel like Division got way more grindy and way less rewarding as we've seen successive updates like 1.1, 0.2, 0.3, and DLC. I feel like it's only gotten less rewarding, which is a really weird way for the game to go. But that's my honest opinion. I feel like as time has gone on, the community, the developers, and the game itself have gotten more, like, fidgety, and gotten, like, the developers have gone more, have gone essentially silent, and are saying less and less, it seems like every week or every, whatever. The community is outcrying more and more for the game to be fixed and these bugs and these problems. Like I was telling my buddy, I was like, if you don't know something, you're gonna screw yourself while playing. Like, it's an extreme example and it's kind of made up, but there are things in Division, like if you equip this certain type of glove, it actually drains your health and then kicks you in the nuts. It's like, what? And there are literally things like that. Like, if you put on this one thing or you use this one talent and you do something weird with your skill, then it kills you. It's like, what? There are bugs and glitches and problems and inconsistencies and broken things here and there and code and yada, and people getting stuck on ladders and skills not working and missions not starting and parties breaking down and people dying at random from just being in certain kill zones that shouldn't be kill zones. And it's just like, if you didn't know that those existed, you almost have to almost have to get paranoid with how much shit is wrong with the game so you know how to avoid those problem areas. You almost have to delve deep into the Illuminati side of the Division subreddit and all of the information and be like, oh, this game is full of bugs, glitches, broken things, bad, it's evil, horrible, this game is terrible, but you have to get there to know what not to do in the game, because half the time, a lot of the tooltips and things describe things completely wrong, or don't exactly tell you what something does, what you assume it does based on logic. It doesn't do. It does the opposite, and it actually harms you for some reason. It's weird. It's strange, and that's another reason why I say it feels like the game is against you, because there's so many problems with it. And, a lot of the advice, quote unquote, that people give each other on the Division subreddit is, hey, did you buy this game yesterday and you're looking for advice on how to progress? Enjoy the first 30 levels, because after that it sucks ass, and never come back and never look at anything Division related on the internet again, because it'll only make you sad. And you can say that, but you're kind of an asshole. Because if you say that to someone, and they take that as genuine advice that the only discussions on the internet about Division are negative, they are going to take that, never look at something again, and then wonder why half their shit doesn't work, and the other half of their shit is harming them while they're using it. And it's not fair. That's not fair to new players. New players deserve to know what does and doesn't work in the game, because the game is damn well not going to tell you. The developers are never going to put out a patch note that says, hey, this didn't work, by the way. They're just going to say, simple fixes. Or they're just not going to tell you. Like when the G36 got nerfed. If you didn't look online and find out the fact that 4 out of the 5 changes to the G36 were phantom patches and were not in the patch notes and were not disclosed to the player, you'd be fucking pulling your hair out as to why the G36, which was stated to only have one change, and that was a reduction in overall base damage by 15%, and when they nerfed the fucker, it went down 15% base damage, they changed the direction of the recoil, they increased the fucking reticle bloom, they increased the per bullet recoil, they decreased the range, they did so much stuff to that weapon that it was insane. That gun went from being one way to another, in the course of 5 minutes. It was insane how different that gun felt, and it's never gonna feel as good as it used to. And if you didn't know about that, if you were using a G36 one day, and then the next day you got an update, you're like, cool, I guess they added something, and your gun behaved so erratically different that you were like, what happened? And you knew that, don't go online because it's all evil and bad, and you didn't know, you would be either really confused or really angry. And it's like, it's not fair. It's not fair to the players to be lied to by omission. And people will say, well, they didn't lie to us because they just didn't say it. That's lying by omission. That's saying, hey, we're changing the G36. It's getting a base damage reduction. I know that you're going to hate that. But instead, they did that among other things. Now, if they always had planned on doing all 7 of those terrible, awful things, just tell us. We're gonna get mad regardless because we're a fucking gaming community. But when you lie by omission, and then everyone's favorite weapon becomes this, steaming pile of figure 8, bloomy, recoily nonsense, people are gonna be upset. And then they're going to data mine, then they're going to look at code, and then they're going to find out that you actually changed 7 things instead of just 1, and then they're going to be really mad. And it's I guess there's really no good way to do anything in the Division, because people are going to be pissed off either way. You can never do everything right. You can't please all the people all the time. But you know what you can do? You can communicate clearly. The players cannot be assholes to each other, and maybe you tweak the loot system to be a little bit more lenient, instead of everything having a 1% drop rate, with so much randomness in the rolls that if you finally do get that gear set glove with the certain gear set you want, and then it has to roll the right, stat, and then it has to roll the right, major attribute, then it has to roll the right minor attribute, and then if it doesn't, you get to go recalibrate it, which is super expensive, and it takes 3 different currencies that you have to go get from 3 different activities, and then you have to pray that you get what you want, and you could never do that, and then it costs 1,000,000 credits to change it. It's insane. And I get it. Maybe they have it built in a way where it's if the player never gets what they're looking for, they'll have to play forever. There's a point on that line that it backfires. Somewhere between 2 weeks and 2 weeks in a day is where I think hardcore players would just be like, fuck it, it's just, why? There are people that still don't have a Caduceus assault rifle that have been farming for it for months. There's no reason for that. It's insane. I mean, even Destiny had issues with, like, the loot being unrewarding, quote unquote. And it's like, but in Destiny, it even felt like if you threw enough time into it, you'd eventually get everything you wanted. And then they changed up the loot system to be more smart. Like, it's like, hey, if you didn't have this, you're weighted more towards it. And their loot system has gotten much better. And I feel like Division is kind of going down the same road. Division, my friend explained it as, like, he kind of described Division as, like, really, really early days of Destiny, when they were still, like, tripping over themselves and not knowing what to do and how to make the game good. And it's kind of true, but I don't know. I feel like a lot of the problems with Division could be changed by the developers really communicating what they're doing, and telling us what's in the pipeline, as opposed to just saying, like, we want to hear what you have to say, but we're not going to say anything. And that's frustrating. It's frustrating to not know what the developers are doing. And I guess that's not an uncommon practice, but even other companies divulge most, if not all, the changes. Massive likes keeping secrets, and not even like for publicity or for funsies. They just do it for no reason, it seems. And then the players get angry. And then they yell, and then they don't want to talk. It's this vicious cycle, and it sucks because the Division could be so fun. It used to be so good, and it could be so good. But the loot system is bad. The progression is bad. Casual players don't make progress, and you could play forever and not do anything. And even on the incursions, like, you have to finish a hard mode incursion or a hard difficulty incursion before you can do the other ones. I can't get into a hard incursion. I can't. It won't let me do it. The players in the game and LFG sites will not allow me in to hard incursions. And it's like, I can do heroic underground, and I can't even get into a hard incursion. It's frustrating. It's frustrating that it feels like everyone's working against each other. And I'm not making this video to be like a woe is me thing. I don't care. If I really wanted to do something, I could find a way to get into a damn incursion. But it's frustrating because it's like, I have a lot more patience than most people. I feel like most people, specifically my friends that have stopped playing Division, that are like of a normal, like, measured attitude and temperament, that are just like, after like a week or two of like, or not even that, after like a couple days of like getting nothing new, they're like, well, this is fucking bullshit. I'm gonna go play a different game that's more fun. And that's where that line comes into play, where you can't drag out the player not getting something for so long that they leave and never come back. Because the only memory they're going to have is that game's not rewarding, the player base sucks, the developers don't communicate, there's a lot of bugs, and they didn't care about fixing it. And it's just a misery. And it is. It can be, and a lot of people feel that way, and it sucks. But I'm sure there's things I missed. I tend to tirade a bit when I get, passionate about something. And it's like, I'm still going to play Division, but it needs some TLC. It needs some deep TLC, and I don't know if it's gonna get it, and that freaks me out. So I want to know what you guys think. If you're still here after this excessively long video, I want to know what you think and what your experiences have been in, around, and regarding the Division, be it Dark Zone, Underground, Incursions, multiplayer, the community, the developers, patches, just progression, anything. If you have anything to say about it, let me know. I like hearing what people have to say, because a lot of it's the same kind of stuff that's not being fixed. And I don't know, maybe eventually if we, pitchfork and fire long enough, they'll fix it, but I doubt it. So I want to know what you think. So let me know. And yeah. So I want to thank you guys all so much for watching and listening, mainly. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, a rating would be much appreciated. And as always, until the next video, have a great day, everyone.